TCI is brought to you by the new Spendthrift Stallion Stakes, the only $300,000 race for 2-year-olds where both owners and breeders profit. Coming to Churchill Downs this October.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Breeders' Cup alongside Joel Cunningham. I'm John Siegel. Well, Joel, we got a few races to talk about this weekend. We're going to launch a TCI Top 5. But first, let's recap a couple races from last week. Let's talk about Tepin, man. I know you said you thought she was vulnerable in this race. I got to tell you, man, she didn't look very vulnerable. She looked like she could be the best turf miler maybe in the world.
Boy, she was loaded turn for home, John. I was dead wrong about the fact that sometimes you see these fillies and mares, they get older, you know, they get in a rhythm. And she had that win streak going. She's been in training for a long time. Then they take a breather. They, bypass the 4-star Dave, train up to the Woodbine Mile, and you sort of wonder, if she's going to need a race back. Might be a little rusty. Well, didn't prove to be the case. The Europeans didn't throw their best at her, but threw, a few colts that were pretty good. Mudakayev's, really in form. May not be a true Group 1, maybe not the elite miler over there, but he was good enough. Now, I will say this. The pace scenario set up for Tepin, in my opinion, wasn't a overzealous pace early. I mean, she was in hand, had the trip, loaded turn for home. And I think those Europeans, they want more of a quick twitch. They want a quicker pace that really sets up their turn of foot. When they come over, Mudakayev had definitely the worst trip. He was left behind that pace that was fairly moderate, had to travel wide around, didn't really get to set up that turn of foot that we accustomed to seeing from the Europeans. So, but it didn't matter. Tepin was certainly, with that pace scenario and as loaded as she was probably going to win the race anyway. The advantage of her tactical speed. So now going to Santa Anita, what's interesting for me is she's going to be the favorite in the mile. Is she going to scare away any Europeans is my question, off of that performance. Wise Dan never really scared away the Europeans, even though he was a top-class horse, but it's because, they never really saw him all year round except for the Breeders' Cup. The fact that she went over to Royal Ascot meet and was able to win, well, that now makes some of the Europeans say, well, there may be better options in Hong Kong or elsewhere as opposed to coming to Santa Anita. Be interesting to see.
It really is. I'll tell you another thing too. I like how Julian, he knows. He waited a long time to push the button. It was pretty surprising how long he waited. The horses came to him. He still waited. He knew he had a lot of horse left. So she's coming into the Breeders' Cup. Looks like she's coming in the right way. Let's jump now. Let's talk about juveniles. We go into the weekend. We were looking at Churchill Downs. We had the Pocahontas, and then, we also had the Iroquois. There was a horse in the Iroquois that you were pretty high on. Not this time, of course, is who I'm talking about. Joel, this horse looks like he's the real deal.
What a promising colt, John. I mean, for a colt that, was obviously well meant in his debut. Didn't win at Churchill, went to Ellis and won. You wondered, what was he beating there? But if you just looked at the performance, regardless of the competition, you knew you were seeing something special. Here he is, the son of Giants Causeway. Robbie Alvarado just kept him in the clear. He doesn't break well. I mean, still a little green, John, and with Classic Empire is the same way. We'll talk about that. But we're talking about a colt with just a big, beautiful, bounding stride. Obviously, Churchill Downs, he liked the footing there, so you already have the connections. Derby dreaming for next year. For him to put 8 lengths on this field, break out going 2 turns, a mile and a 16th, the furthest he's been so far, get an 86 buyer, and he was really kicking it in the final 16th there. You saw him extend that beautiful stride, a beautiful colt with a tremendous upside. Really makes you think, you're not going to see, I don't think, not this time's best as a 2-year-old. You're going to see his best as a 3-year-old. And to me, on a lot of the early Derby watch lists, you'll see this colt #1 based on that performance at Churchill.
All right, well, the list we're talking about today is the TCI Top 5 for the Juvenile. I want to know, is not this time #1?
The Juvenile is always one of the more intriguing Breeders' Cup divisions, John. We'll go over here to our top 5. And for me, not this time isn't #1. He's in the 2 spot, and that's just because the race is at Santa Anita. If this race were at Belmont or Churchill, I'd probably have not this time #1, the fact that they're wider turns, more fair track. But we know Santa Anita can play to speed, and familiarity, I think, at that course is very important. So I'm going to put Bob Baffert #1, and Klimt, a horse that's done nothing wrong, John, just improved in every start. His Del Mar Futurity was his best yet, going 7/8. And if you look at this colt, he's a tall, leggy colt. No question, a mile and a 16th is going to be well within his wheelhouse for Bob Baffert, who, when you look at the last 8 Breeders' Cup, 5 of them have been run at Santa Anita. Now, a couple of those were on Polytrack, but Bob Baffert's won 2 of the 5. Midshipman, New Year's Day, would have won probably 3 of the 5 if American Pharoah didn't get hurt, have to go to the sideline. So I like Bob Baffert on his home track at Santa Anita. That's the reason Klimt is #1 for me. Not a pretty mover. He moves a little wide up front. He looks a lot better from the side than he does from the head on, but if they keep him sound, to me, he's the horse to beat. Not this time again. really has you Derby dreaming for next year. Same with Classic Empire, a horse that is bad from the gate. We know what happened in the Hopeful Stakes, John. He's going to try to rebound in the Breeders' Futurity, but that's a dangerous spot for him because there's not a big run at Keeneland at 1/16 into that first turn. If he draws poorly and breaks poorly, it could compromise Classic Empire's opportunity to go into the Breeders' Cup the way he wants to. To me, his future, again, is at 3 more so than at 2, but he's so talented, you got to have him in the top 3. Theory, I thought was the best maiden winner at Saratoga, John. Has a 2-turn type pedigree. Certainly in middle distance won't be a problem for him. Now the problem with Theory is he lost a good almost month of training when he went a little off. They had to bring him back to Lexington. He checked out fine. They sent him back to Pletcher. He even worked this past Tuesday, his first work back. So I look at Theory, a colt with immense talent. I don't think he's on track to make the Champagne. He's coming up a little quick, obviously being that it's, October 10th. So I think that they're going to have to bypass that race, October 8th rather. I think they're going to have to point for a week later. 6 furlongs, the Grade 3 Futurity at Belmont's a more realistic spot. Now the question is, will they rush him into the Breeders' Cup off of that race? Never been around 2 turns. To me, I think the more practical routes, maybe to go to the Nashua, the Remsen, maybe bypass the Breeders' Cup. But as long as he's in consideration, he's talented enough, he makes my top 5. And the Straight Fire, a local horse, maybe a little exposed last time out, going a little further. To me, everybody sees the AP Indy broodmare sire, but if anybody knew Tricky Indy, when Al Stahl, I think, trained her, she was a speedy filly. It's a speedy family. He looks like a colt to me that you have to have based on his quality in the conversation because the Breeders' Cup's at Santa Anita. He's going to be the speed of the speed, which anytime that's the case at Santa Anita, you have to have him in the top 5. But I still think maybe his future's around 1 turn. So Straight Fire makes the top 5 for me, John. But Klimt obviously ran him off his feet in the Del Mar Futurity.
Well, last weekend you surprised everybody with California Chrome in the number 2 spot. This weekend, I don't see any surprises there. I think it's a really solid top 5.
It's a good group.
We mentioned that there's no win in your ends this weekend, but there are some very good races. We got the Cotillion where we're going to see Songbird in there. Let's talk about that race here for a second. You see Carina Mia, she was disappointing last time against olders. You see her back in here against 3-year-olds, but unfortunately she's going up against Songbird. Tell me, what do you think of her chances?
Yeah, they've tried this before with Carina Mia. It didn't work out so well at Saratoga, and I think what they're going to do now that Carina Mia drew the rail, they're thinking, well, let's go the lead, show speed based on that rail draw, try to make Mike Smith come and catch us with Songbird over a track that usually plays to speed, John. So Carina Mia is a filly that I think they're looking at this race saying it's $1 million. We can't turn it down. Last opportunity running against 3-year-old. I thought Joel Rosario moved a little early on her last time in the Ballerina when she faced older mares and was a favorite in there sprinting, which I think that's what she wants to do. If I'm looking at Carina Mia, I'm kind of looking at this as an opportunity for her to go the lead and just see if the track can carry her around there. Maybe Mike Smith doesn't time the ride well enough. Maybe Carina Mia does like she did last year at Churchill Downs when she went to the lead going 2 turns and was able to draw away. Now, this isn't stage play she's drawn away from. This is Songbird. I think Mike Smith will stalk her, prove much the best at a 1/16. But Carina Mia, to me, still is a major contender in that Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint division. I think that's what she wants to do 1 turn. And to me, she might be at the top of that division right now for me going 7 furlongs at Santa Anita. But it's so hard to pass up a grade 1 for straight 3-year-olds, $1 million. They're taking a shot here with her. To me, Cathryn Sophia is an interesting horse. She's a local horse. The Oaks winner, people may have forgotten about her. She's proven that 2 turns isn't really an issue for her. If they were to get a little nutty up front with Carina Mia and Songbird, maybe going too fast, there's a possibility. This filly has a ton of quality. If Javier can sit right behind him, make that last run, there's a possibility of an upset there. But for me, this is Songbird's race to lose. She's going to be able to cruise on the outside based on her post position. And I think she'll probably go into the distaff as the favorite, maybe even over Beholder.
Wow, that'd be interesting. Well, let's keep talking about 3-year-olds and let's talk about the Pennsylvania Derby.
Yeah.
We see a really interesting race in here. As we mentioned, it's not a win and you're in, but Joel, this field is full of class. We see Exaggerator in here. He won the Preakness this year.
Yep.
We see Nyquist in here. He's our Derby winner. Joel, this race could have championship implications.
It really could. Arrogate's really forged to the front of the division. It was an allowance horse, came on the scene late, but boom, after that Travers, we started thinking about names like Nyquist and Exaggerator. They're almost like afterthoughts now because everybody's so excited about Arrogate's performance and his future. But based on the fact that we got a Preakness winner, Santa Anita Derby winner, Florida Derby winner, Kentucky Derby winner here, that 3-year-old championship division is still wide open. Let's not forget the winner of this race, if it were to be Nyquist or Exaggerator, they're going to go into the Breeders' Cup as maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th choice. Between the 2 of them, and there's a chance based on this performance, and who knows, a defection here or there, and they're back in the conversation that both these colts like a mile and a quarter. They like Santa Anita. If they were to win that classic, they're in the horse of the year conversation now.
Sure.
So let's not forget about Nyquist. I think last time out he was, pressured. I thought he would win the Haskell, but the fact that he was pushed early by American Freedom, was down on the inside there, maybe needed the race. They've trained up to this. I think over a race like Parks, he reminds me of a horse like Bayern, a horse that is tactical and fast going a mile and eighth. I think is going to really have a big advantage in this race. But there's a lot of speed signed on here, John. They're giving away $1 million. They get a full field, a ton of speed. If it gets a little too wacky up front, it should set up perfect for Exaggerator. The question is, can he close from that far back on this racetrack and pass every horse? That's why I like a horse maybe like Nyquist better, that is a little more tactical. But very interesting race, and be interested to see between those two who can maybe jump back into the driver's seat for 3-year-old champion.
All right, thank you, Joel. Thank you guys for watching. As we mentioned, no winning your ends this weekend, but next weekend we got 7 winning your ends. It's going to be a huge weekend. Make sure you come back. We'll recap this weekend. We'll launch a few more TCI top 5s. Thank you guys so much for watching.